You know, sometimes it's not until after you publish a video and you go through the comments that you realize that maybe you didn't cover the topic as thoroughly as you could have or should have. So you kind of go back now and you got to fill in those blanks. And that's what we're doing now. Because in that last video we posted about hand fitting pistons, select fitting pistons after you've hand honed an engine to get the best fit, matching the biggest piston with the biggest bore and so on and so forth. So we covered all that pretty thoroughly, but there's other aspects to it that we should have gone into. So here's what you need to understand about on this channel. We're building a Chrysler 383, but anything we build, we always try to make it as universally applicable as possible. Like in the old days, the magazines used to use small block Chevys for everything, and then you had to determine, you had to interpret that information and apply it to your particular situation. Well, that's what we do here on this channel. We build Mopars, but we try to make the information as broad as possible because we have viewers building Fords and Pontiacs and Chevys and Toyotas and Nissans and International Harvesters and John Deeres and Saabs and Subarus. We have people building everything. So we try to make this, we try to give everybody watching these videos something to latch on to. All right. So we glossed over a few things, didn't cover a few things, and I think we got to do that now and bring everybody back up to speed. So let's start with this. A couple of people in the comments asked about balancing. You know, so if you're taking the pistons and you're moving them around the engine, does not affect the balance? And the answer to that is no. These engines, now remember context, assembly line engines, these engines are all what I call batch balanced, meaning that the crankshafts, the piston and rod assemblies are all balanced to within a range that's going to be acceptable given the RPM range of the engine that they're going in. So, because individually balancing each engine is a very time-consuming and involved process. So the manufacturers just balance everything to within a range. And then the red line of the engine is going to be, let's say, 5,500, whatever it happens to be. Well, everything's going to be balanced acceptably to that RPM. You know, just a sidetrack real quick. Back in the day, the manufacturers used to give cars to the magazines doing road tests and drag tests. And they used to accuse the manufacturer, if you had a fast one, they'd accuse the manufacturer of supplying a ringer. And the ringer was exactly that. The ringer was an assembly line engine that was hand assembled. So it was balanced perfectly. And it was blueprinted in every way, perfectly, using all of the stock parts. And those engines would perform significantly better than just the one that you'd randomly pluck off the showroom floor. So, but at any rate, all of the engines that we're talking about in the context of this video, this series, are regular assembly line engines, and they're batch balanced. You can take any piston and rod assembly from any hole and swap it to another, or even taking a piston and rod from another of the same engine family and swap it in and out, and there will be no balance issues. All right. Now, we made it appear, and in some cases it's absolutely accurate, but we made it appear that you can just anytime willy-nilly swap all of the pistons around into any hole you want and send it, but that's not the case. And an example actually on this engine that we should have gone into, but we didn't, is that most assembly line engines, by the way, these are the pistons and rods from that 383, and they're laid out in order. Okay, so this is cylinder 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. If you're dealing with a Ford, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because Ford. So if you're dealing with an engine like this that has pressed wrist pins, meaning that the pin is pressed into the connecting rod. It floats in the piston, but it's pressed into the rod. When you're dealing with a situation like this, because of connecting rod orientation, you're really only limited in swapping pistons that are from the same bank. So in other words, you could swap this piston for this piston for this piston, this one for this one, and it's all good. And the same with this side. You can't just take this piston and swap it directly for that piston. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So, now, before we go any further, if you happen to be dealing with an engine that has floating pins, meaning that the pin floats in the piston, but also floats in the connecting rod. Well, on those engines, you absolutely can knock the retainer out, slide the pin out, disassemble the piston and rod assembly, rearrange them any way you want, and put it back together again. So on an engine that has floating pins, you absolutely can put any piston into any position. Although we are going to talk about pistons in a minute. What you have to be concerned with now is rod orientation. And so I'm going to tell you a story about how I killed an engine by not paying attention to this. This is years ago, and it was like a valuable lesson. I'll get to that in a minute. So, rod orientation. These are laid out as they're found in the engine. Now here's what you need to know. Every assembly line engine you're going to come across has a pin offset. Okay, so you'll see that that's a pin oiler hole, and you'll see that it's closer to this side than it is to this side. Some engines is very minor, it's like 30, 40, 50 thousandths of an inch. Some of them it's pretty significant. But you'll see that the pin is offset here to the right, offset here to the right. They're all like that. Now also you'll see that you've got a notch here on this part of the piston, not this part. So this notch corresponds with the front. This notch corresponds with the directional notch that you find on the top of the piston. Okay. So to retain the reason they do this is because by offsetting the piston, what you're doing is you're reducing the possibility of any piston slap, of the thing making any noise. So they do this at the sacrifice of power because there are frictional losses, there are parasitic losses of the piston against the cylinder wall. And there's also a geometric disadvantage to the connecting rod's relationship to the crank arm when doing this. Because to the manufacturers, reducing any possibility of engine noise is much more important than freeing up a little parasitic power. So that's why they're all offset like that. If you notice now, our connecting rods, now everything's oriented the way it's supposed to be. These are the front cylinders facing the front, and then you'll see that we have a chamfer. Okay, each of these connecting rods has a chamfer. So there's one there. Go to the other side, there's no chamfer, it's a flat surface. And then here, this is its mating connecting rod, so they join each other on the journal. No chamfer, and then chamfer. So those chamfers always face to the outside. Now, not every connecting rod has chamfer, and some connecting rods have two chamfers. You need to know what you're working with to know why or how these things have to be oriented. So here is a big block Chevy connecting rod, and you see that it has a slight chamfer on each side. Here is a small block Mopar connecting rod, and this has no chamfer on either side. And just for the sake of sake, look at that's a comparison. It's a direct side-by-side comparison between a big block Chevy connecting rod and a small block, a 318 Mopar connecting rod. Amazing, right? The small block Mopars are definitely overbuilt. So, not every connecting rod is going to have a chamfer. When you do have a chamfer, the chamfer always has to be to the outside. All right, I'll show you why real quick here. You have to look at the crankshaft to understand. So this is a Chrysler crank, and this has what's called a rolled fillet. So you see the interface here between the journal and the crank cheek. You see that line that's in there, it's pressed in there? That's called a rolled fillet. When a crank is being manufactured, that metal is pressed. They compress it, and that strengthens that area of the cheek. So that's one type of journal interface you're going to come across. No chamfer is necessary there, but those pistons that we have that go to this crank are chamfered, and I'll explain that in a minute. Most cranks have nothing here. It's just a plain, right angle, just from the journal to the crank cheek. And then other cranks are going to have what they call a fillet radius. And a fillet radius is going to be where the journal blends and it flows into the cheek. Now that type of crank, a fillet radius, absolutely requires a chamfer. And those engines usually have a very large chamfer. Those connecting rods are very pronounced chamfer. So keep that in mind when you're reorienting pistons and rods inside your engine. The chamfer always has to be to the outside. So on these Chrysler connecting rods that don't have a fillet radius but have a chamfer anyway, the reason for this is twofold. The first is you're reducing the amount of material exposed to the crankshaft as it's spinning. The chamfer is actually providing a place for oil to gather. So the part of the connecting rod exposed to the spinning crankshaft or the spinning cheek is minimized, and at the same time this chamfer gives oil a place to gather as it leaves the bearing. So you're going to find that on the outside of each of these connecting rods. On the inside, it's not really necessary. Here you have just a flat, broad surface. And that's because as companions, these two rods are moving together on the journal. And there's only slight movement between them as they go through their motions. Whereas on the outside, this is directly related to RPM. So the faster the engine goes, the more frictional possibilities there are here. And that's why that chamfer is there. Again, not all of these engines, not all connecting rods have chamfers, so be mindful of that part of it. Now, another thing you need to be mindful of, there's an industry standard, let's say, or a standard practice on a V-style engine. By the way, all of these things we're talking about apply also to inlines, 4s and 6s, but we're kind of just sticking in the world of Vs right now, just because it's what we're working with. There's an industry standard that says that the connecting rod, when it's properly oriented in the engine, is going to have the bearing retainer tangs, okay? The tang, facing the outside. So if you're working on the engine, let's say you're standing next to the engine, okay? And you're sending pistons into the motor. When you go to assemble, you're going to reach underneath. You're going to orient the cap to the rod that you're putting in there, and you reach underneath to put it in. Well, those tangs are going to be facing the outside. They're going to be facing towards you, towards the pan rail. There's no real technical reason for this other than it's just the standard way things are done. And that bit me one time. This was years ago, and it taught me a lesson to, like, really don't ever take anything for granted. Because I was refreshing an engine for a customer. It was a small block Chevy. And this is going back 35 years ago. So I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm standing next to the motor and I'm knocking pistons in, one after the other, and it's all good. And each one of them, I'm reaching underneath, I'm feeling around, I'm finding, I'm lube the bearing, reach underneath, find the cap, make sure that the tank's facing me, stick it in place, and then put the nuts on. Completely routine. Do it over and over and over and over again. There's never an exception. There was this time, somewhere along the line, now I don't know if it happened on the assembly line, not likely, possibly like at the dealership or sometime during this engine's earlier life, it had been disassembled and reassembled with that one connecting rod that I'm talking about turned around. So the tangs were facing the inside. So when I put the cap on it, I put the cap on it backwards because I didn't bother to look, because I just assumed. Because you always assume when things are always the same way, you assume that's the way it's going to be. You know what happens when you assume, right? You make an ass of you and me. So the offset of the bearing wasn't enough to bind the engine up when I rotated it. So it felt completely normal as I rotated it. but it was probably just enough so that like the overhang was acting like as an oil scraper. So the engine started, it idled fine, it ran fine for a few minutes. Then I got in it to drive it. I got like halfway down the block and it started knocking like crazy because at that point it spun the bearing. There's no clearance. And nice as an oil scraper. So from that point on, now I double check every time I put a piston in. I always double check that the connecting rods are oriented with those tangs to the outside. And it, so keep that in mind. It's an expensive oversight. So that's the unwritten rule of every engine you're going to come across, every V-style engine you're going to come across. The tangs, the bearing tangs, are always to the outside, to the pan rail. Some engines have a pin oiler. So if you look right here, you see that hole? That hole corresponds with that hole right there, and the job of that is to spray oil at the wrist pin of the opposite side bank. Now, not all engines have that. Like this Chevy has no pin oiler, no hole. So theoretically, because there's no chamfer on either side and there's no pin oiling on either side, you can drop this connecting rod in any orientation and it'll be fine. But the standard is to put the tangs to the outside. All right, did I cover everything I wanted to cover with that? I think I did. So let's move on to pistons, because there are going to be variations in pistons. Now, with a flat top piston, yeah, you can put this in any hole because there's no dome, it's completely flat, there's no valve reliefs. There's nothing in the combustion chamber to interfere or dictate how that piston is going to sit. But some engines have valve reliefs. Some of them have symmetrical valve reliefs, like early Chevys, Windsor Fords, early small block Mopars, all have 4 valve reliefs in each cylinder, 2 facing up and 2 facing down. So that piston could go in either way and there's going to be adequate piston and valve clearance. With those, yeah, those you can also put in any position and there won't be any problem. You've got aftermarket pistons like these that have symmetrical valve reliefs. So because the valve reliefs are both the same size, these pistons can go in any hole. But some engines have asymmetrical valve reliefs and they have domes. So when you come across an engine that has an asymmetrical valve relief, so examples of that would be the big block Chevy, would be Cleveland Fords, several engines. An engine with asymmetrical valve reliefs, well, those pistons can only go in one of 2 positions in that on either bank that they're on. So in other words, because they're asymmetrical, your valve arrangement is going to be, in a typical V8, is going to be exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. So those asymmetrical valve reliefs are going to have to match up with the bigger intake valve, the smaller exhaust valve, so they can only go in one of 2 positions on each bank. So keep that in mind also. But still, none of this negates the fact that when you're hand honing an engine and hand fitting pistons to that engine, you can still find the best match. It may not be the one, diagonally across the engine, but you'll still find a better fit, even with, like I says, those asymmetrical valve reliefs, the 2 positions, you'll still find a better fit for the piston than just randomly dropping it in and hoping for the best. So all of this adds up. All the little steps add up. All of this knowledge adds up too. Trust me when I tell you, there's so much to it. And after I do this video, we're going to send this video, I'm going to go through the comments, and there's going to be, but what about this and what about that? And I'm going to be like, why didn't I think of that? But you see, I'm a YouTuber, so that just makes more content and everybody's happy at that point. All right, I think I covered it all. Did I cover it all? Yeah, I covered it all. So that's it for now, and now I got to continue on, and I got to get that block cleaned. So I'll see you tomorrow.